I'm Mindy Peterson, and this is Enhanced Life with Music, where we explore the ways music can make our lives better and spotlight the resources you can use to enhance your life with music. As a music educator, I have been a member of MTNA, Music Teachers National Association, for years, as well as my state and local chapters. It was such a treat this spring to have MTNA's annual national convention held right here in Minneapolis, where I live. I met today's guest at the convention. We got chatting one day in the exhibitor hall. And when I learned what today's guest is doing with her work, I started drooling and wished I knew about her work when I was more actively teaching piano lessons. As a piano teacher, I would say that the biggest challenge that I consistently witnessed was parents wanting to give their child the gift of music through lessons, but not wanting to, quote, force it on a child when they didn't want to practice. And sometimes these same parents would lament that they wish their own parents had not let them quit piano lessons when they didn't want to practice. There's sort of a lack of clarity around what is the teacher's role, the parent's role, and the student's role, and how much fun and how much work should be expected in the music learning experience. Enter today's guest. Barbie Wong is a passionate music educator and founder of Musical Nest, a vibrant community supporting teachers and parents and inspiring kids to make music. She has worked with thousands of educators worldwide, sharing practical strategies to nurture musical growth, foster motivation, and create joyful, engaging learning experiences for children. Barbie uses her background in classical piano and music degrees from Stanford University and Smith College to blend research, real world experience, and a deep love of teaching to inspire kids and the grown-ups guiding them. Welcome to Enhanced Life with Music, Barbie.
Oh, thank you so much, Mindy. I am so glad to be here.
So great to have you here. Like I said, when I heard and understood about the work you were doing, I was just like, "Oh my goodness, I wish I would have known about this when I was teaching." You have so many resources that you offer for both parents and teachers. I want to get into describing them in a moment, but first, I'd love to have you share a few insights from one of your most popular workshops, Music Practice: 5 Ways to Make It Easier. For parents who are in the audience and also teachers who are always looking for strategies on this topic, what are some of the top ways for parents to make practice easier? How can they best support music practice at home? How can they impact their child's motivation and help their kids develop strong habits?
Well, let me just tell you a few that I think are so important. And the first thing that a lot of times we don't think about when we think about practice is actually to bathe children in music. Sometimes when people come to me and they say, "Oh, my kid doesn't want to practice," what ends up happening is when I hear more and more about what's happening at home, I learn a lot of times the children aren't even listening to music. And you probably know this, music is a language, and the easiest way to learn a language is through immersion. And the
Mm.
easiest way to entice children is to have things around them so much that they want to copy those things. So
Ah,
if the family is a sports-oriented family, which there's nothing against sports, but let's say the family's priority is sports and they're watching sports, going to sporting events, that child is going to naturally want to do sports. Likewise, with music, if you get the family saying, "Wow, I want to listen to this song," or, "Oh my goodness, when I was a kid," the parent talking, "I used to listen to this and we would dance to it," or whatever. If the parents, if the grown-ups are excited about music and show that interest and play music around the house, the children will naturally want to do it as well.
that's really interesting. I haven't heard it put exactly that way before, but that totally makes sense. And I think back to some of the students that I've had in the past who had a strong interest and motivation in learning music, and it wasn't necessarily the students who were all motivated to do the contests and compete and perform in certain ways. It was more they had parents at home who music wasn't their parents' vocation, but it was something that their parents really valued, either listening to music regularly, going to live music, going to concerts, or I think of one family, the dad took some formal lessons as a kid, not a lot, but enough that he could just play on his own. And every night when he came home from work, that was his way of winding down, is just
Mhm.
taking some time to play the piano. So really interesting to hear you explain it that way.
Yeah, in my research, because what was happening was with my own children, basically struggled. My kids didn't want to practice and things of that sort. And even though I was saturating them with music, I realized there was all these other things that could be done. And what I did was I looked into the lives of adult musicians. Because a lot of times we just think about, well, what is it we want our children to do? A lot of times parents aren't interested in, I want this child to be playing at Carnegie Hall. Most parents want, oh, I want my child as an adult to play music for fun. And so
Yeah.
I've interviewed a lot of these adults and I've looked into the lives of adult musicians. And lo and behold, the ones that are making music as adults, they had so much musical input as children. They were listening to music. I mean, Elton John talks about how the radio was constantly on. Lin-Manuel Miranda talked about how his parents were obsessed with Broadway musicals. So you can see from all these examples, that's what these quote unquote, a lot of times people think, oh, these are prodigies. No, these are people so steeped in music that they can't not make music.
Ah, interesting. Well, and it's also a way to demonstrate and live out the value that you place on that activity as a parent. It's one thing to pay for lessons and take your kids to lessons and provide the instrument, which is huge. But if you're one of those parents who are saying, put the headphones on though, because I don't want to listen to you practice, that's communicating something very different to your child as opposed to walking the talk in terms of really getting a lot out of music in your own life and demonstrating that you really do place a value on it and that it enhances your own life.
Yeah, exactly. And what teachers can do is to guide parents to say, "Oh, please play the music you enjoy," or they can even assign students to listen to music or watch videos. I mean, part of learning music isn't just to play the instrument, it's also to absorb the sounds that that instrument makes by professional or more well-developed musicians.
Mm,
The other thing that I highly recommend is to make it social. Kids really wanna be with other kids. Kids have most fun with other kids, and the unfortunate part of learning a musical instrument is that the practice necessarily has to be done in isolation. You can't have 5 or even 2 violins in the same room practicing because the sound just carries.
yeah.
So, the sad part about practice in a way, or the tough part about it, is that kids have to practice by themselves. But if any way possible, make sure that kids have a chance to be with other kids, whether it's in group lessons, have them sign up for band or orchestra, or send them to a music camp. I
Mm.
actually hated practice until I went to music camp. And once I went to music camp, everything changed. What ended up happening was in my research, I found out, oh, this is the same thing that happened to Joshua Bell. I think he went from practicing, I don't know, 45 minutes to an hour before music camp to practicing about 3 hours
Oh, wow.
after that. So it's a huge motivator when kids get to make music with other kids. And not just that, you have to make sure that they're also developing friendships. Because I've heard of people say, well, but my kid went to orchestra, but they didn't really like it. And I asked, well, what were they doing after orchestra? Were they hanging out with those people or did they just leave? Because we want them to develop friendships from those social experiences.
That's another a really interesting insight too. Those were not the 2, strategies I expected, and I love both of them. It's funny because incidentally, I just had a conversation about this social aspect of learning yesterday with a college music faculty who I connected with through my job. She organizes a piano camp every year, and just shout out to her camp. If you're in the Twin Cities area, Bethel University has a summer piano camp every summer. Actually, this is the second annual camp that they're holding. But she was talking about that was a major motivator for her creating this camp is because piano and other musical instruments can be so solitary in terms of you have a private lesson. You sit and practice on your own, and we are social creatures. And I totally related to that when I was teaching actively. I did have regular group lessons, not super frequently, but several times a year. And it was really interesting to see how kids thrived on just that social connection and playing for each other. And the young kids thought it was so cool. They got to be with some of the older kids during those groups. And the older kids just really rose to the occasion and nurtured and mentored those younger students. And so it was really fun to see the dynamic of those groups and the kids then when they would show up at recitals, they knew each other, and it did create more of a camaraderie amongst themselves and almost more of a community in the piano studio, even though for the most part they were just showing up for individual private lessons from week to week.
Wow, that's great. I love hearing that. And I think about how important it is also for the teacher's role to really encourage those music camps and group lessons or group ensembles. Because I still think about my own daughter when she was taking cello lessons, her teacher would consistently say every year, "Oh, why don't you think about this camp or this camp?" And it took us about 3 or 4 years until we finally signed up. So don't give up. If there's teachers out there, don't give up. Just keep reminding parents
Sure.
how wonderful it is.
Sure. And that is a good reminder because so often we do need to hear things multiple times. And the person who's mentioning it multiple times can be very tempted to think, well, I offered it and they didn't want it or they didn't take me up on it. I won't keep pushing it. When really, you can just keep planting those seeds. And sometimes it does take multiple mentions before it really sinks in or catches somebody's attention. Well, like I said, you do offer so many resources for parents and teachers. There's free resources, there's paid resources. I know there are some free downloads on your site. One of them is a guide called 10 Ways to Inspire Kids to Make Music. So I encourage listeners to go to your site and check that out. What do you want listeners to know about that guide and the other free resources that they can find on your site?
Well, those are great ways to get things started. They're great ways to think about those things. And it's funny because what I'll do is I'll look at these, or when I first made it, I just basically it was my own download of all the things I really thought if you did nothing else, if you only did these 10 things, or even the first top three, I did them in, I felt like the most important to maybe you don't need to do as much
So prioritized,
order.
yeah.
Yeah, I prioritize. I say, if you do these, you can see a big difference. And the funny thing actually is that when I occasionally go back and I read those, I am reminded and I realize, oh, I don't think I'm doing number 4 very well, or oh, I forgot
Sure.
about number 6. So it's kind of nice to have, and then to kind of go back and look at it
Revisit.
periodically. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or even print it out, put it on your refrigerator and keep looking at it. And I've actually had a lot of guides where even children, one time at this keynote speech, a teacher brought her child, I think her 8-year-old child, and afterwards he came up to me. He had highlighted things on there for his parent to look at.
These are the ones I want you to do, mom and dad.
Yeah. I think
Well,
the one
then
he really loved it said, music practice is difficult for most children, and a lot of humans don't like it, and that's okay.
sure. Sure, yeah. Well, Yo-Yo Ma has said that he hates
Mhm.
practicing. And you
Oh,
mentioned
yes.
Joshua Bell, yes,
Mhm.
it is very normal, especially when you're weighing it against playing video games or going
Yes.
outside and riding bikes with my friends. Like most kids are gonna feel like playing video games if they're given the choice between the 2. I mean, that's just normal.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Well, and
I
that's
agree.
funny that the kid highlighted it because really, I mean, different things do work for different people. I just think back to when I was a kid, my mom always had us do certain chores. And I remember occasionally she'd write up my list and I'd say, well, you didn't include clean the bathroom or whatever it was. And she said, well, I know you already did that. I said, "No, I want you to put it on there so I can check it off." Like, I like being able to check it off the list, and if that's something that your kid really gets in, if that's something that does something for him, it's nice to know
Yes.
that. And that sounds like that kid knew what he wanted and needed and was letting his parents know. What are some of the other
Yeah.
free resources that you have on your site? I know there's a free download that's a practice schedule that you can download and sort of create with your child. What are some of the other things? A
Yeah.
blog?
Yeah, I have a blog, I have some YouTube channels, some stuff I also do have a Instagram. Yeah, just things that I feel like, wow, if I can give information to parents and teachers in a way that's easily accessible. A lot of times I try to make it so it's bite-sized chunks because I know a lot of us are busy. But yeah, just a lot of these ideas that I have, and sometimes they're just completely random. I just did an Instagram post when I went skiing, and I just thought, oh my goodness, skiing is very similar to learning music. And I thought, wow, this maybe there are some skiers out there and it would reach some of them. So
Yeah,
anything to make it easily accessible.
love it. I think there's an e-newsletter on there that you can sign up for. And
Yes.
like you mentioned, just following you on socials will give a lot of regular, systematic input just on things that may resonate with parents when in the moment when they see it. One of my favorite ways to enhance my life with music is to play just for fun songs on the piano at the end of the day. My current favorites are ABBA songs and songs from the 80s, like We Are the World. With sheet music direct, I can explore new music, track my favorites, play and download scores anytime from any device. This online treasure trove of digital sheet music is powered by music publisher Hal Leonard and has over 1 million arrangements, ready to view, listen to, and download instantly. Prices start at just 99 cents and include selections for every instrument, genre, and skill level. My family has relied on sheet music direct for years for musical joy and convenience. For an entire musical library at your fingertips, visit sheetmusicdirect.com. If you've listened to this podcast for long, you know that in addition to being passionate about music, I am also passionate about natural health and well being. So I was intrigued to learn about an all natural toothpaste developed by a biologic holistic dentist to effectively clean and protect teeth and strengthen enamel without fluoride or the many chemicals that are ubiquitous in the commercial toothpaste that I've always used without a second thought. What really caught my attention was that one of these dentist products was specially formulated for sensitive teeth, which I have thanks to gum recession. I was a little skeptical that an all natural product would provide adequate sensitivity protection, but after trying it for several months, I am a fan. What clinched the deal was going to my 6 month dental cleaning and having my hygienist rave about the whiteness of my teeth. To learn more about the Living Well sensitive tooth powder and their other products and get 10% off your order, check out the link in the show notes or use coupon code MUSICENHANCES10 at livingwellwithdrmichelle.com. You also have premium resources that are paid resources, and there's so much there in a variety of price points. I know you have an ebook that's I think just $10. But tell us about the ebook and tell us about some of the other premium resources that you offer, including the Musical Nest community.
Yeah, the ebook was something that I just basically wrote in a day. It was something that I realized, oh, there's all these reasons why kids don't want to practice. So the ebook is called Why Kids Well, at first it was called Why Kids Hate Practice, and then I thought that was a little too much, and so I put why kids and then in parentheses sometimes hate practice,
Yeah.
because it's true.
Oh,
And
yeah.
a lot of adults hate practice, and as we talked about, you talked about yo-yo ma. So many people do not like to practice, and there are many reasons why, and there's ways to address them so that we don't just say, "Oh, my child doesn't like to practice. I guess my child is just going to quit this instrument." No, it's just so common, so let's just deal with that reality and find ways that are palatable for the child, including things like playing games and making sure that things are done step by step. Because some children, of course, it depends on the personality and also the dynamic between teacher and child and parent and child.
Yeah.
Some children really need things done in a certain way. Some children needs to have more of a transition. So that's one of the reason why kids hate practice is some need that transition period. And so without that, a lot of kids will just say, no, I don't want to practice. But if you tell the child, hey, we're going to practice in 15 minutes. First of all, you're not saying, do you want to practice? Never say that. Don't make it optional. Just say, oh, your practice is happening in 15 minutes. So you have 15 more minutes to play whatever it is, with your Legos. And then maybe that child needs a 10-minute warning and a 5-minute warning and okay, now finally it's time. Why don't you go ahead and put that away and I'll meet you at the instrument. So it just depends on the child how much essentially scaffolding you need to give them.
Yeah. Well, and one thing I love about that, I know you and I talked about this at MTNA when we met, is a lot of these strategies are not just for music lessons, they're life strategies. Because a lot of times this also applies to the kids' homework, doing like who feels like doing homework? Pretty much nobody
Yeah.
usually, or who feels like brushing their teeth before bed or cleaning the bathroom, as I mentioned earlier. Most of these disciplines of life are things that we need to learn how to do them and how to make ourselves do what we know we ought to do, whether it's for a job or school or family life or whatever. And so a lot of these strategies that you talk about, both in the ebook and in other ways in your resources in your community, it transfers to other areas of life. So I love that as a parent, as a teacher, knowing that these skills are so transferable to every other area of their life. And hopefully all of our children who are experiencing music lessons are going to be launched into life when they graduate much more better equipped for being a good roommate and being successful in college and being in a a healthy relationship because of some of these strategies. But I digress. Tell us more about the anything else you want to say about the book, or if not, let's tell us about your
Yeah.
musical nest community.
Yeah, the musical nest community is basically it's a place I wanted parents and teachers to be able to feel like they're literally in a nest, that you're surrounded
Mm,
by something that's really comforting and supportive. Because really, when we think about what we want for our children, we want them to be able to eventually fly out and go and do what they want to do. But before they can do that, we want to provide them with a lot of support and also I think about it as us, the grown-ups who also need support during this. Because the hard thing I think about teaching music is if, the teachers are getting pedagogy, they're getting trained how to be teachers, a lot of that does not teach them how to work with parents. They learn how to instruct the students, they learn how to become skilled in their own instruments and skilled with teaching the child. But there's not as much support with, well, what do you do with parents? How do you help
sure.
with structuring actually the practice and how does the parent get involved? Or if the parent isn't involved, what do you do to make sure that the parent understands the progress? Because
Yep.
I understand not all parents are involved and that's fine, but I think that at least most parents at some point want to know, oh, my child is progressing.
Sure.
And so Musical Nest is a place where we have a lot of different exchanges. We have it's an online platform, and so you can go in. It's basically it's a place where there's all these different spaces. There's a space where you can ask questions of the community. There's a place where we have live events, and so we have these live event spaces where you can say, "Oh, I'd like to go check out this thing or this." We have community meetings. I have something called Parent Talk, where I invite a parent who has raised a musical child to come in and talk about that journey. How did
Mm,
she or he raise this musical child? And it's been great because I think last time we had a parent who talked about how her daughter does bluegrass fiddle and how she's a professional musician at 18 years old, but going off to Berkeley School of Music. And then I had actually a father and the son is a Steinway artist and a professor of music at Notre Dame. And they talked about what was happening when he was growing up. So these are really fantastic ways for parents to understand, oh, there's not just one way to raise a musical child. and for teachers to really get an insight into, wow, there's all these different things that can happen, and oh, this is how the teacher's role plays into all this.
Yeah, fabulous. I know there's also a lot of other resources that are offered to members of the Musical Nest community. There's archived YouTube videos. I think you mentioned, or maybe I saw it on your website, the Wednesday wines and wows. It was just I love it. It's kind of like what's working and what's not. And so
Yes.
I think that would be really encouraging for parents and teachers to see like, oh, I'm not the only one who's dealing with this, and
Yeah.
just be inspired by some very practical tips and hacks and things that are ideas that have worked for other parents and other teachers that they can try out.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, those are fun. We have Tuesday tips and Thankful Thursdays. The things that really get the community involved and engaged and celebrating each other too. I see a lot of support across the across the ways, and we actually have a lot of really really resourceful people and people I would say are experts in different ways. One of our members knows so much about improv and composition. And so during our community meetings, there have been times when she shares things and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, this is so valuable. Or
Wow.
others talk about their practice challenges that I now have adopted in my studio. So it's not just, I feel like, I have a partner who's co leading this community, Christine Goodner. We're both experts in our field, in this field, but the people we draw in, they have all these wonderful things to contribute as well. And I
Yeah.
guess I want to mention also that we have challenges. We had a practice challenge in January, which was fantastic. And this is a way for both the grown-ups, but mainly for the children to get involved. Because a lot of times with the musical nest, it feels like, okay, we have grown-ups supported. Well, what do we do with children? And so that was when a children could actually, this was a 30-day practice challenge, and people got prizes for different days that they practiced. And, they could report on, hey, this is how I practiced today. They could show a little video or just all these really fun things. And at the end, we had a fun celebration.
Oh, cool. I know you also have games on there for
Yes.
parents and teachers. So a lot of really creative ways on how to foster a love for music, whether you're a parent or a teacher, ways to sort of integrate music learning in the home, uh, fresh ideas, inspiration. So really lots of great ideas. I think you and Christine both are parents and have taught your own children music lessons. Is that right?
I don't know if Christine has. I have,
Okay.
and I would say the first was my failed attempt, which is actually in some ways kind of good because this is what brought me to this topic.
Ah.
I didn't I didn't do very well with my first child, and she started to really resist playing the piano. And I just thought, if I am an experienced musician, teacher, I have 2 degrees in music, and my own child will not play or is resisting practice, what's everybody else doing? What are all the parents doing who don't have any musical expertise?
Yeah.
And so then I started doing research, started changing things. With my second kid, then we did had a fantastic both parent and child, but also teacher and child relationship. And so I taught my kid, I think between the ages of 3 and 14, so about 11 years, and that
Okay.
worked out really well.
Oh, good. I also taught my own
Ooh,
children music lessons, and when I started, I thought, "Well, I don't know how long this will last before I need to, switch them to a music teacher who's not their parent." And we ended up doing it for the full time that they took lessons, most of the time that they were living at home before graduation. But it definitely had its challenging moments and its joys too, both. I
mhm.
mean, there's pros and cons to it. I think, and you alluded to this, your experience teaching your own kids is a little bit what guided you along this journey and into the path that you ended up creating this community. Can you tell us a little bit more about how your own joys and frustrations in that stage of raising music making kids kind of influenced your work and brought you to the point where you are right now? I think you kind of
Yeah,
created what you wished you would have had, is that right?
exactly. I I wish basically, I'm doing all this for my younger self.
Yes.
And, and and for me, 'cause it confused me because I thought, "Why do some children seem like they naturally see," there are if there's a whole spectrum. There's certain children that are so much more excited about practice and certain children that just really aren't or flat out refuse. And was trying to figure out, well, what's really happening here?
And
And
each child could
yeah.
cycle through different seasons of both of
Yeah.
those stages, yeah.
Yes. Yes. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. It actually it reminds me of the time when I was teaching, online, and this one student, I couldn't figure out, he kept looking to the right until finally I asked the parent, I said, "What's going on?" He said, "Oh, there's a window there and his friends are playing
Oh.
outside." So I said, "Well, how about we move this to the other side?" And, that was good. So, but it was a good reminder, sometimes a solution is so easy and
Mhm.
quick.
Yeah.
And, all you have to do is physically change where the child is focused. And then sometimes it takes a little longer, like saturating the environment with music. Just because you play music for your child for 2 days doesn't mean your child will suddenly want to make music, but if you're doing that for the next few months, the next few years, then you really help develop really deep roots of, musical desire.
Yeah. Well, the Musical Nest community is one of your premium resources. I believe it's available for as low as $10 a month when paid
Mhm.
annually. Is that right?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
so we'll definitely include lots of links in the show notes for that, including to a link on your website of a video that kind of gives a little introduction with both you and Christine chatting on there about um, what the community looks like and what you can expect to receive as part of that community. There's a 14-day trial available where if you don't love it in 14 days, it's on you, no questions asked. People can cancel within that time period. I would love to know if you have some kind of a studio plan. I know we talked a little bit about this at
Mm,
MTNA. Is there anything in the works to offer a studio plan for teachers so that teachers can sort of build membership into their studio rate for their families? I know when I learned what you were doing, like I said, I was just like, oh my goodness, I wish I would have had this to offer to my for myself to take advantage of the resources, but also to offer to the parents of my students. And I was just thinking it'd be wonderful if you had some sort of a studio plan so that the teacher could just buy a more expensive plan that they could then offer to all of their students. Do you have anything like that in the
yeah.
works?
Oh, so wish I did right now. We are actually working on something, or I'm talking to Christine, and we're like kind of going back and forth on a lot of ideas. So it's in the works. And I would say if any listeners want to be updated on that, just get on my newsletter. I will definitely send it out once that becomes a reality. And
Awesome.
also, I would love to hear ideas on that because I don't know of any places that have studio plans. So, we're trying to figure out the best way to make that happen.
Sure, sure. Well, yeah, listeners, if you're a parent or teacher who want to see something like that happen, let Barbie know what your ideas are. Probably the reason it popped into my head right away is because there's a piano app, Piano Maestro, that I used a lot when I was teaching actively, and they had studio plans available.
Mm.
And so that's probably where I got that idea. But yeah, that would be something really amazing to be able to offer. Let's talk about the timing of this. Our episode will release later in May. And at that point, a lot of students will probably be sort of at the tail end of their school year, if not already done with school. I'm thinking this would be a great time for parents and teachers, really, to kind of experiment with your plan and your membership over the summer while their kiddos, their students might be on a little bit more of a casual lesson and practice schedule. And that way the parent themselves also may have a little bit more breathing room in their schedule, teachers too, during the summer. They could maybe implement some of those games and some of the other ideas that they see on your site so that their students don't lose progress over the summer. They can just hit the ground running in the fall. But do you have any other recommendations for this time of year, kind of late spring, summer, for listeners who are hearing this when it releases and maybe contemplating how they want to implement this into their either teaching plan or their work with their own kids at home?
Oh, yes, definitely. In fact, we are going to have a summer music bingo challenge that's going to happen. So the idea is we're going to give out bingo cards, which have different tasks on them relating to not just practice, but also, things like, watching videos or going to see live music. So we know a lot of people will be traveling as well, both teachers and families. And the idea is that you'll have until we have to figure out the time, maybe August, September, to basically complete that bingo card. And people who
Mm.
have completed bingos will be in a drawing to win a certain prize. And then people who have completed the blackout of the bingo will get a certain prize.
Ew.
And then, yeah, so teachers can pass this on to their students. And, that way there's music happening in the summer. Even if practice can't happen consistently, at least there's still musical input.
Yes, love that. What a fun idea. Well, anything else that you want to make sure listeners know about your resources, what you have to offer, the Musical Nest community before we close things out with a coda? Anything that we missed that you want to make sure listeners know about?
I think I just want listeners to know that this this whole thing about getting kids to make music and enjoy music, it's a long and windy road. It's something that I have to learn, oh, okay, I need to be more forgiving of myself. There's all of these ways in which we can get so frustrated when either a child won't do something we want them to do, or I've worked with both parents and teachers. When the parent teacher relationship, a lot of times the teacher will say, wow, if the parents would only do such and such, they don't seem to hear me. And vice versa, the parents are saying, "Oh, wow, the teachers don't seem to understand."
Mm. Mhm.
Um, I just I just think that it's good to just give people a little grace and to try as much as you can to communicate, because we're all trying to do our best,
Uh-huh.
and also, then at the end of the day, I think the most important part is our connection with the children. Like, are we connected with them? Okay, yes, maybe practice doesn't look amazing today, but maybe practice is just we're going to play these three pieces and I'm still able to stay connected with my child. And I would consider that a win.
Mm, love that. Well, thanks so much, Barbie, for sharing with us and for all these wonderful resources.
Yeah.
I encourage listeners to check all of them out and to share them with their teachers. If you're a parent, let your teacher know about it. If you're a teacher, let your parents know about it because there's so much on there that I can just see really enhancing the musical experience for the parents and the teachers and the child and bringing great results about. So, thanks for all of those. As you know, I ask all my guests to close out our conversation with a musical ending, a coda, by sharing a song or story about a moment that music enhanced your life. Do you have a song or story that you can share with us today in closing?
Yes, this happened about a year and a half ago. My grandmother, who lives in Taiwan, she has had Alzheimer's for many years. And at some point, it was very obvious, everything was starting to shut down. And all of this time, I was keeping in touch with her through my parents. We would do video calls. And at some point, I thought, my grandmother, she loves music. She grew up listening to music and she actually grew up during the Japanese occupation. And so I would hear her sing Japanese songs all the time. But she obviously, she knew Chinese. And so I started singing to her in Chinese. I also play the ukulele. And so I would sing these Chinese songs to her. And it was interesting because you could see that by then, she couldn't talk. Her eyes were closed, But when I would sing to her, she would move her mouth, sometimes she would moan a little bit, and it was just so wonderful to feel like, wow, I can't be there with my grandma. She can't, maybe she can't hear my voice as well, or maybe she could, but music was what was reaching her. And
Yeah.
music is what was helping her, I'm hoping, uh, transition and
Mm.
hoping that it gave her a lot of comfort as she was dying.
What a great way to connect with her and figuratively hold her hand at that
Mm,
time when you couldn't physically be there and do that.
yeah. Yeah, it
Love
was it
that.
was one of the best moments of my life.
Ah, thank you so much to Barbie for sharing that story, for joining us today, and for all she does to enhance lives with music through her work with music students and the adults who guide them. As always, there are lots of links in the show notes to all the resources we discussed today, as well as a transcript of our conversation and related episodes you may enjoy, including My Child is Taking Music Lessons. What's my role? How to Talk When Kids Don't Want to Practice. That was an interview with the famous authors of the How to Talk So Kids Will Listen and Listen So Kids Will Talk series, and an interview with the author of one of my most favorite titled books of all time, How to Get Your Child to Practice Without Resorting to Violence. All Enhanced Life with Music episodes are evergreen, so be sure to check out the back catalog for more ways that music can make your life better and enhance your child's life for a lifetime. If you know someone who would enjoy this episode, perhaps a music teacher or parent with kiddos and lessons, please share it with them. It's easy to do right in your podcast app. Just tap the share feature for options to share by text, email, or social media. Thank you so much for joining me today and for sharing the show. Until next time, may your life be enhanced with music.